On a cold night in June 1962, 3 male inmates made a crazy decision that shook the world. They walked out of what the world called escape-proof Alcatraz and vanished into the fog. Was it genius, luck, or something darker? This is how it lost most unforgettable prisoners. Tonight we follow every clever move they made, step by step. Alcatraz Island, the rock, sat a mile off San Francisco with cold water, strong currents, razor wire, and guard towers. Between its concrete walls lived some of the country's most dangerous criminals. Yet on the night of June 11, 1962, 3 inmates disappeared and the world still argues about whether they survived. Let's meet them. Frank Lee Morris, born September 1, 1926, was a career criminal with a reputation for being extremely smart. Officials later recorded his IQ as high and saw him as the brains behind the plan. He was about 35 years old at the time of the escape. John William Anglin, born May 2, 1930, and his younger brother Clarence Anglin, born May 11, 1931, were both from Georgia and were about 32 and 31 when they vanished. The Anglin brothers grew up poor, learned to swim in their youth, and had committed robberies together, which partly explains why their rafting idea would not intimidate them. All 3 were in Alcatraz for serious federal crimes, mostly bank robbery and related offenses. The Anglin brothers had long records of robberies and had served time in other penitentiaries. Morris had previous arrests and a string of convictions that brought him to the federal system. They were considered troublemakers in other prisons, which is why they ended up on the rock. This was not a last-minute act of desperation. The plan grew over months. Frank Morris and the Anglins were assigned adjoining cells in the B block. They quietly tested the prison's routines and structural weak spots, like the ventilation ducts beneath the sinks. They also studied magazines and manuals available in the prison to learn about life preservers and flotation, which later fed directly into their raft design. Work in the prison mattered. Inmates worked in industries, shops with sewing machines, metalworking tools, painting supplies, and other equipment. The men used the shop access and the cover of routine work time to assemble tools and gather materials. They scavenged discarded saw blades, used spoons from the mess hall, and even improvised a drill motor from parts they could reach. They used cardboard and painted panels to hide holes they were enlarging in the vents and masked the sound with the noise of music hour so guards wouldn't notice unusual scraping. Now for the step-by-step of how they did it. Using improvised tools like saw blades, spoons, and that jury-rigged drill motor, the 3 men slowly widened the ventilation grills in their cells. They worked in tiny increments and concealed their progress with painted cardboard and other cell decorations. Once the vent holes were big enough, they crawled into the maintenance and utility corridor behind the cell block. This corridor was unguarded and had a direct path to the top of the cell block. They created a hidden workshop on the unused top tier of the cell block where they could work away from routine inspections. Here they sewed, glued, and assembled all the escape gear. To fool the nightly bed checks, they sculpted dummy heads from a paper match mixture made of soap, toothpaste, concrete dust, and toilet paper, then painted them and used hair clipped from the barbershop floor. The dummies looked realistic enough to fool guards during the early morning head count. This is the moment that turned myth into method. They collected over 50 raincoats, stitched them together into pontoons, and sealed the seams with liquid plastic and resin they obtained from the shop. They stitched with needles and thread, used heat from steam pipes to help seal the seams, and even made paddles from plywood. They based at least part of their design on articles in Popular Mechanics and other magazines that describe life preservers and flotation devices. To get out, they removed rivets from a large fan on the roof to create a bigger opening. They would climb up through the shaft, break out onto the roof, and slide down a kitchen vent pipe to reach the ground. From there they climbed barbed wire fences to reach a low, less lit section near the power plant. To inflate the raft, they used a concertina, a small accordion, modified as a bellows. One inmate's small musical instrument became their pump. On the night of June 11, 1962, after lights out, Morris and the Anglin brothers put their paper mache heads on their pillows, tumbled extra clothing under the blankets to bulk the beds, and slipped out. They climbed through the widened vents to the utility corridor, up to the roof, and down the pipe to the shoreline. At about 11:40 p.m., they inflated the raft and pushed off into San Francisco Bay. A fourth conspirator, Alan West, was left behind because his concrete repairs hardened and blocked his exit, leaving him to find evidence of the unfinished raft and dummies in the workshop. The prison discovered they were gone during the early morning count on June 12th. A massive manhunt followed boats, helicopters, and the FBI scoured the bay and the coast. The FBI later concluded in 1979 that the men most likely drowned in the icy, fast currents of San Francisco Bay based on the conditions and lack of conclusive evidence of survival. But they never found bodies, so the official mystery remained open. Over the decades, sightings and leads popped up. Family members claimed to receive unsigned cards and even photos supposedly showing the Anglin brothers in Brazil in the 1970s. In 2013, a letter allegedly from John Anglin said the men survived, naming dates of death for his companions, but handwriting and DNA tests were inconclusive and authorities never confirmed it. Many investigators argue the escape was plausible, and modern recreations have shown similar makeshift rafts could cross to the mainland. But others point to the brutal bay conditions that likely ended any chance of survival, so what's the hidden truth? It's not that Alcatraz had one glaring security lapse. It was the combination of patient craftsmanship, observation of routine, clever use of prison resources, and exploiting small blind spots. The genius was in the details: life preserver research in magazines, sewing an airtight raft from raincoats, fake heads to buy time, and a quiet workshop where they could operate for months. Whether they lived or died, the escape is a masterclass in planning and improvisation. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the 20th century's great mysteries, tell me in the comments which theory you buy. Did they make it, or did the Bay win? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next true crime deep dive.